everyone, it's James from the Fit RV here, and the next 2-3 videos you're going to get from us are going to be kind of about this. And this is the 20K project as implemented. So basically I added 20,000 watt hours of lithium battery capacity using Lithionics batteries to our Winnebago Echo. I also replaced the inverter. I replaced the solar charge controller. I added a new bus bar system. A whole lot of cool stuff going on here. There's even HVAC work in this. Cool stuff going on. But inevitably, the only thing a lot of people are going to want to know when they see this is, how long can you run the air conditioner off of batteries? And I am not going to answer that today. No, really, I'm not. But what I will tell you is how you could figure it out. Not just for my RV, but for your own RV or for any other RV you might be considering purchasing. It's useful information. There is a little bit of math involved, but it's not hard. I'll explain. It's pretty simple. Let's go inside. Okay, so the whole how long can you run the air conditioner on battery question, it's almost gotten to be like a pet peeve of mine because there's so many variables affecting the answer that any single answer you can give to it is kind of meaningless. And there's no way at all to compare the answer for one rig to another rig. Now, lots of well-meaning people, and I'm including ourselves in this, have put up videos and written blog posts trying to answer that question. And I believe that most of us were genuinely trying to be helpful. But in the end, these videos and blogs don't really provide anything useful. And when you think of your own situation, basically, it's still kind of just a guess. So like, consider a video where someone says, they ran their air conditioner for 6 hours on battery power. Okay, great, 6 hours, sounds good. But think about all the things that go into that one 6-hour number. The number would be affected by the temperature outside the RV, right? I mean, the hotter it is, the harder the air conditioner is working, the more juice it uses. It would also be affected by what the temperature had been set to inside the RV, obviously. The humidity would also play a role, like how much moisture is the air conditioner pushing around. It might matter that 3 clouds passed by that day at 12:47, 2:15, and 6:38 p.m. It might even matter if there was another rig parked next door, blocking the morning or the evening sun, right? It could matter that they had tossed a towel and the towel was covering up a quarter of a certain window and keeping heat out of the rig. It might even matter if there was a heat-producing dog inside the rig, and it gets out of control so quickly that it's just kind of dumb. So I recommend that you don't even pay attention to experiments like that, even ours, in the future, and I'm refusing to do any more of those from here on out. But here's the thing. We've all had to do it like that because until now, there's been no standard way to describe these battery inverter air conditioner systems. And all the information that's out there now has basically been from marketing efforts. It's either corporate marketing, who obviously want to put out as big a number as possible, or from people engaged in self-marketing, so you'll watch their channel. Okay, so today I'm here to fix all that and propose a standard way to rate these systems so that everyone is speaking the same language and that you can compare one rig to another. It's a simple formula. It's objective. It doesn't depend on time of day or insulation level or dog status, and you just need 3 pieces of information to get there. Now, the objective is to come up with a worst case runtime estimate. Now, why worst case? Well, if you're using this time estimate to plan out if you can leave your pet in your RV while you go ride a century ride, then we want to make really sure that you're going to beat that time, and that's what this number should do. Now, we do have to make a couple of assumptions in order to make this work, but they're pretty reasonable. Now, the first one is going to be that the air conditioner is running flat out, nonstop, as hard as it can the entire time. Any other kind of standard would be meaningless. Why is it meaningless? Well, let's suppose your air conditioner starts to cycle. Well, if you're asking how long can you run your air conditioner, and your air conditioner is cycling, then it's not running. So how long can I run my air conditioner on battery power when my air conditioner is not running? Freaking forever, that's how long. That just doesn't make any sense. So since we want a formula that eliminates nonsense, we're just going to assume that the air conditioner is running all the time in 110-degree plus desert conditions, end of story. Now, the good news is that you should always beat or at least tie that number. Now, the other assumption we need to make is that we're not running anything else. How long can you run your air conditioner off battery if you're also running an arc welder at the same time? Probably not so long. And there's no way to know what else might be running in someone's rig, so we're just going to call that out as a limitation. Just know that if you're also running a welder or charging your Tesla or whatever, that you won't be running your air conditioner as long. And that's okay because I think most people would expect that. Okay, so let's get to the formula. The first thing you need to know is how many usable watt hours your battery bank has. And if we're writing it, we represent this with something like the letter B with a subscript U for usable. Now, there are two very important callouts in what I just said. The first thing is that I said usable, so we're talking about the usable capacity. So let's say you have a lithium battery that will shut down when it hits some sort of reserve power level. Then you need to deduct that reserve from your calculations, because if the battery shuts down, then you can't use the battery, and then you obviously can't use it to run your air conditioner. Now, our Lithionics batteries have a reserve power level of about 10%. So only 90% of our total capacity is available to run the air conditioner for the purposes of this calculation. Now let's say you have lead acid batteries. You can still play along. Lead acid batteries generally aren't going to shut themselves down, but you're not really supposed to discharge them below 50%. So if you wanted to rate some lead acid batteries with this formula, AGMs, what have you, then you would derate the batteries by 50%. Now, the second critically important thing I said was that I specified the battery capacity in watt hours, not amp hours. Now, I know the capacities of many batteries are expressed in amp hours, but that's an old-timer's way of doing it, and frankly, it's just incorrect. It's just plain wrong. You ever wonder why the power company bills you in kilowatt hours instead of kiloamp hours? It's because they know what they're doing. Newsflash, amp hours is not a unit of energy. It's a unit of electric charge. So it's not even really measuring the right thing. It'd be like if you asked me, James, how far can you drive on a tank of gas? And I answered, 13.4 miles per gallon. I mean, okay, that's sort of useful information, I guess, but it doesn't really answer what I asked. You see, electrically speaking, you need both current and potential, both amps and volts, to get to energy. And energy is what your batteries store. Amp hours is kind of a holdover from the old days when all the batteries were lead acid and they all had the same voltage, and so you could compare them that way. But these days, batteries have different chemistries, they have different resting voltages. You can't really compare the energy in a battery just on amp hours anymore. Watt hours, on the other hand, is a unit of energy, and it takes both current and voltage into account. Interesting aside, you know what else is a unit of energy? Megatons of TNT. So yes, you could specify the capacity of your battery bank in megatons, and you'd actually be more correct than someone using amp hours. And before you ask, I've done the math for our battery bank. In number one, we have a 1.76 times 10 to the negative 8th megaton battery bank. Boom! I just like the sound of that. Anyway, to recap, your first input, battery capacity, that's usable capacity and expressed in watt hours. All right, the second piece of information we need is the running wattage of your air conditioner expressed in watts. And I guess I would probably call that something like L for load, and that's expressed in watts. Now, you're probably going to have to look at a few spec sheets or manuals to find this out, and I can't really say for your particular make and model of air conditioner exactly what you might find. But I can tell you that you need to look for the worst case number, which will be called like desert conditions or something like that. Or if they give the performance correlated to the outside temperature, pick the hottest temperature. Now, when you're looking at this, you might not find it expressed in watts. You might find it listed as an amperage, but we need watts. So if you only find amps, that's okay. Most RV air conditioners are 120 volt appliances, and before you jump in, you'll know if you have a 12 volt air conditioner. So if you find amps, just multiply the amps by 120 volts to get watts. So take our air conditioner on number one, for example. It's a GE air conditioner, and finding exact information for that GE air conditioner is not super easy. Now, I happen to know, just because I've been playing with it a while now, that it runs at about 1420 watts when it's 110 degrees outside. And by the way, I'm not super happy that I know that because it means I've been outside playing with the air conditioner when it's 110 degrees outside. But anyway, now recently at Winnebago's rally, someone took a picture of a data sheet on our air conditioner from the manufacturer's rep that listed the running amps at different exterior temperatures. And here that is. We have the high efficiency unit, and at 110 degrees, it says it runs at 11.8 amps. Well, 11.8 amps multiplied by 120 volts is 1,416 watts, which tracks really well with what I observed in testing. Now, the data you find for your air conditioner might not be in a cool table like that. If not, then basically just take the largest running number you can find and convert that to watts if it's not already. There are two numbers you don't want to use though. The first is the locked rotor amps you'll see sometimes. That represents the startup current, not the running current. And we all know that air conditioners take more energy to start than they do to run, so don't use that number. The other one you don't want to use is just the amp rating on the circuit breaker, because the air conditioner doesn't run right up to the limit of the circuit breaker all the time. Okay, so to recap, second input, running wattage of the air conditioner expressed in watts. Now, the final input that you need to know is the efficiency of your inverter. This may be a bit harder to find, but if you just keep looking through manuals and spec sheets, you'll find it. Now, why do we need that? And I would express this as maybe just like a E, and it will be a dimensionless quantity, just a number. Now, we need that because your inverter is what takes the power from your batteries and converts it into AC that can run your air conditioner. And like every device known to man, it is not 100% efficient. In other words, not all of the battery taken in by the inverter is going to be converted into 120 volt power to run your air conditioner. Some of it is going to be lost as waste heat. Well, if the power is lost, then it's not available to run your air conditioner, right? So we have to deduct that. Now, these efficiencies will be expressed as a straight up percentage, and you'll typically see something in like the 80 to 90% range. And depending on your inverter, you may see them in a spec sheet as either a maximum or as a full load. If you see more than one efficiency, you should feel free to take the maximum efficiency, which is how efficient is your inverter when it's operating in its sweet spot. Because remember, one of our assumptions was that we weren't going to be running anything else along with the air conditioner. And a single air conditioner on a single properly sized inverter ought to be right about in its sweet spot. So, third input, inverter efficiency. So, we have our three inputs. Now, once you have those, the formula to calculate air conditioner runtime is your battery capacity, usable battery capacity in watt hours, multiplied by the efficiency, which is just a number, divided by running air conditioner watts. And I love this because if this is in watt hours and this is in watts, then like the watts cancel out and you're left with just hours and the units work out just like in Docky's physics class way back when. It's fantastic. Now, I'm calling the result of this calculation, this number, NRE, a Normalized Runtime Estimate of the battery inverter air conditioner system. I thought about naming it after myself because I got here first and planted the flag, but Steph talked me out of that, buzzkill. So instead, I am claiming this formula on behalf of all RVers in the name of sanity. Okay. Now, the formula itself might not be just grabbing you, or it might be giving you scary high school flashbacks. So let's do an example using our own number one after our 20K Lithionics upgrade. Our battery bank consists of 5 Lithionics batteries, each of which has a capacity of 4,096 watt hours. So we have 20,480 watt hours of capacity. But now remember, our batteries keep hold of a 10% reserve, so only 90% of that is usable. So we multiply 2480 by 0.9, and we arrive at 18,432 watt hours. 18432. That is the usable capacity of our battery bank. Now, inverter efficiency. Our Victron Multi-Plus 2 inverter has a 93% peak efficiency, which is actually pretty darn good. So we multiply 1832 by 0.93 and we get, in the numerator, 17,142 watt hours. Okay, that's the numerator. Now, the denominator, the running watts of our air conditioner. From that spec sheet we saw before, we know that our air conditioner is supposed to use 11.8 amps when it's running in 110 degree heat. So to get the watts from the amps, we multiply by 120 and we get 1416 watts. So 1416 in the denominator. Okay, so the answer is divide 17,142 by 1416 and you get 12.1 hours NRE. Okay, cool. So we now know that with our setup, I ought to be able to run the air conditioner for at least 12 hours and 6 minutes before the batteries shut themselves down at reserve power level. That's fantastic. I know that'll get us overnight, no problem, in just about any conditions I can imagine. But let's say you weren't interested in going quite so far over the top as I have. So let's run the calculation for a totally stock Winnebago Echo. Now the basic Echo has just one 4,096 watt hour battery. But that battery is going to have the same 90% reserve as ours. So you multiply that by 0.9 and you'll get 3,686 watt hours of usable capacity. Now, we have a Victron inverter in number 1, but the stock Echo has a Xantrex inverter. That 2,000 watt inverter has a peak efficiency of 91%. So we multiply 3686 watt hours by 0.91 and we arrive at 3,354 watt hours in the numerator of the equation. But now we have the same air conditioner as a stock Winnebago Echo, so we divide that 3354 by 1416 and we arrive at 2.4 hours NRE. Now that we have a formula, let's talk really quickly about what affects the NRE and what doesn't. Well, the first thing that affects it, obviously, is the size of the battery bank. You got more battery, you're going to run the air conditioner for longer. No surprise there. The second thing that affects it is the efficiency of the inverter. A more efficient inverter will run the air conditioner for longer. Now, the differences you're going to get there are likely to be small, but when you get to larger systems like ours, just a 2% difference in inverter efficiency translates to about 20 minutes in worst case air conditioner runtime. And the last thing that affects the results is the air conditioner wattage. An air conditioner that uses fewer watts will, rather obviously, run for longer. But this may be something that owners want to investigate. It's actually a pretty easy mod to upgrade your RV's air conditioner to a more efficient model. And I should know because I have replaced our RV's air conditioners about 5 times now, actually. Okay, there are 2 things that are not in the NRE calculation that are kind of notable. The first is solar power. If you've got solar power dropping energy into your battery bank at the same time that the batteries are running the air conditioner, it's obviously going to run it for longer. But just as we said we weren't going to consider any extra loads in this calculation, it also makes sense not to consider any extra energy sources either. And besides that, solar is far too variable, even minute to minute if you sit there and watch it, to be able to calculate in a really reliable way. Now, the other thing we're not considering is insulation, and there's a few reasons for that. First, calculating an accurate R value for something like a completed RV would be extremely difficult to do on paper. You'd really need a climate lab of some sort to figure that out because you really do need to do it for the whole RV and not just a wall or a roof or something. But the bigger reason has to do with the fact that we wanted to consider the air conditioner running flat out the whole time, and it would certainly do that in an uninsulated coach. And as a told you so kind of example, even in our Echo, when I parked it out in the sun at 110 degrees, that air conditioning never cooled things down to the point where it cycled. And the Echo is a substantially insulated RV. So if we could get to that point in our Echo where the insulation wouldn't allow the AC to cycle, then it's a pretty safe assumption that we couldn't do that with most rigs out there. Now, this isn't meant to knock insulation and say it's not valuable. Obviously, a well-insulated rig is going to be much more comfortable than one that isn't. And the extra insulation might allow the air conditioner to cycle in the right conditions. So be aware of it, insulate, but don't use it as an input to calculate NRE. So there you have it. Now, I really think NRE, Normalized Runtime Estimates, are a standard and sensible way to compare things. But I also know it's not going to stop people from sharing random information like, I ran my air conditioner for 10 hours all night long and I had 15% battery left in the morning. But now that you're a little bit more savvy, you might say, yeah, but But you were running the air conditioner at night, so there was no sun beating on your RV heating it up. But maybe it was only 80 degrees out when you went to bed at night to start with. But maybe it was raining and that helped keep things cool. But maybe you had your thermostat set to 76 degrees and I keep mine set to 68. The air conditioner was cycling and mine wouldn't, and so on and so on and so on. So yeah, their 10-hour number may be true, but it's not very useful to you if you're trying to figure out how long you can leave your dog in the desert while you go run an ultra marathon. If you were to rely on that 10 hours, you're probably going to be pretty disappointed and your dog is going to be really annoyed with you. But if you use NRE and you figure that you're pretty much guaranteed 2.4 hours of runtime minimum, then there's really no way you're going to be disappointed, so just go run a 10K instead. So you see, what we're trying to do with this simple formula is to give us a standard way to compare these things, and I hope we can all start using this as a way to compare. So if you're talking to an RV sales guy or an RV manufacturer, ask them for a normalized runtime estimate, because if you don't, you're going to get a number that they think will make a sale, or some number cooked up by the marketing department, or some pie-in-the-sky number they heard from a customer who might have been running their air conditioner in January off batteries. But if we all start talking in this standard way, if we're all speaking the same language for the battery AC runtime, then eventually it's going to stick, and it'll make sense to people regardless of what rig they're in. And that way, as more and more manufacturers come out with rigs that can run the air conditioning off battery, and you all know that's coming, right? We'll have a realistic and grounded way to compare them instead of leaving it up to marketing. So, all right, our Ecoths 20K project upgrade has an NRE of 12.1 hours, but how did it really do when I tested it? I'll be completely honest, I really don't know. I parked it in the driveway, it was 110 degrees out, and it ran for over 14 hours. But by then the sun was going down, and frankly, I just got bored and shut the test down. So over 14 hours is sort of the practical answer, but I don't know how to take it past there. But now, how did I do that? How did I wire up all the Lithionics batteries? How did I accommodate the inverter? How in the world do I keep things from overheating when it's 110 degrees outside? Where did I fit it all? That's the kind of stuff that's going to be in the next few videos. So if that's of interest to you, stay tuned. James from the Fit RV. Hope you found this useful. See you later.